Hey everybody, just taking a moment on my lunch break to update you on everything that's been going on in my life in agriculture and everything else. A lot of you that have followed me over from music know that I made a big change in moving into agriculture with my experience in aquaponics and hydroponics and trying to transfuse that into a technological advance in the agriculture sector. Back east, a lot of the million acre farms have already adopted a lot of those techniques. Even here in the west, potato farming actually is really big. I got an experience with that with Simplot. Um, my micro farm had some issues moving forward with landowner discrepancies and a few things like that that caused a few setbacks. Some of the things that I learned there are always make sure that you've got proper approval, you've got everything in writing, and don't just go on somebody's word. It is worthwhile to get it in writing. And earlier this year, I started an endeavor with a large scale farm and have gotten some great experience in this season. One of the first lessons I learned, I'm obviously carrying over from my experience with ICF and what I learned there. And in ICF, you build a home out of styrofoam blocks and then fill them with concrete. And one of the things that was stressed there was make sure all your planning is perfect, because if you have anything that's not perfect coming up front, it's going to come out in the back end and it's going to cost a lot of money and time. That's definitely something you can apply in all aspects of your life, and especially in agriculture. In ICF, we would set the foundation. They had to be 1/8 of an inch tolerance throughout the whole building. That was important to every level that went out from that. And you can apply this, like I said, in your life in so many different aspects. But if you lay the correct foundations, do the math, and do the forethinking, and think of, okay, well, this could go wrong. So let's prevent that by having a solution ready if that happens beforehand. One of the ways that I've seen this implemented is train your people. Make sure your people are well trained in what they do, and they're also cross trained to take over any other necessary applications or duties, being that people come and go. I mean, people do have lives and live normal lives, so you got to plan for that. Um, One thing that I've noticed that transfers over from that dynamic into agriculture is the more time you take up front to plan, you're going to set up some pretty good ideas and stick with these ideas. Stick with the plan, but make sure you think it out. Do a good walkthrough of what you're doing in your agriculture, whether it's like right now I'm working at a hemp farm. um, when you're thinking through the process of how to do something, think of all the different aspects of it, and like I said, think of what can go wrong and prepare for those. Have a solution ready for those. And when you come up with a plan, stick with it. And if you don't have a second plan, a plan B or plan C, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. But if you do, then you know where to transition and you're not losing any time or input there. Um, so again, that's all back to planning and sticking with your plan. Um, and I've had to make a couple changes on the fly. Also, you've got to be prepared to make changes and stand behind those changes as you make them. Um, and getting things out of the field and into the barn facility, much like potato growing. In a potato storehouse, a lot of the things cross over from the hemp industry and what they're experiencing right now. It's been an interesting expose of a new industry and, um, you know, gaining a different level, moving up in levels and professionalism and attitude. And one thing that can really help there is when you find professional people, create incentives to hold them there. Not necessarily force them to stay there, but incentivize them to stay with your team. Key players are really important and they're worth their weight in gold. Now, trying to transition into automation in different fields, like I was talking about earlier, the large farms back east, they're really used to automation. In Idaho, a lot of the large spud fields or potato fields, they've already developed automation. You have a lot of very automatic systems that have already been in place. One thing you can do, whatever industry you're in and retooling up, is you can look at other industries. You don't have to stick within your industry for solutions to problems of growth and automation. Another dynamic aspect that I've noticed is the human aspect of an industry can really fight against automation. And there's kind of a dynamic difference in that some people might feel that they're going to lose out on a job or work, and the thing is, it just takes a different perspective. In like the automotive industry, um, you saw a huge crash because it happened so quickly. But if an industry sets it up so that their employees that are going to be displaced by automatic or automation itself, educate these employees, which we're trying to do as a government, but I think it's also an employer's responsibility to step in and go, okay, well, I'm going to need these people. If I don't want to pay the additional costs and downside of pulling in education from outside of the area, or changing the dynamics of the whole economic structure, then they're going to have to be retooled to help facilitate leveling up their employees and not looking elsewhere, because they're going to lose out on a lot of the foundations that those key employees were really keyed into. Um, and implementing that shouldn't be an issue with your employees. It's just a communication issue of communicating that to the employees on the ground that, okay, yeah, this is going to go faster. You're not going to be needed in this position, but you might have an easier position. You might be able to sit at home and do some of the work from home. Um, and there's a lot of different dynamics that happen there. But that is one interesting thing I've noticed in going up in scale and trying to do so quickly. The other thing is, don't make your changes quickly unless you absolutely have to. Put a lot of thought into them. Let's see, what else have I learned? In agriculture, it takes time to make these changes in such a way that you can implement them. Let's see, like irrigation. Irrigation is very simple on the leading edge of things, and it has its flaws. But they've been worked out by other industries, and you can look towards the other industries like hydroponics as compared to infield. Okay, well, how do you run a square mile of hydroponics in the dirt? Well, it's exactly the same concepts as just putting it to scale. Same can go for flight. We've had how long have we had quadcopters around? Now scale up a quadcopter and its deployable load capacity as far as size, and mathematically you could probably do it. So I'm off subject, but waiting for quadcopters to come out in the aviation field. That'll be kind of exciting. Um, some of the economic aspects of the industry and agriculture, being in hemp here, is since the Farm Bill passed and hemp has been widespread, you've got a bunch of people with a bunch of different ideas of how to utilize and capitalize on that. And right now, because of the displacement of food products here locally, it's mostly orchard grass and things like that that are being displaced. But that's causing those items to go up in price, which is causing the beef that is grown here and the meat products that are grown here to go up in price. So you have to be aware of what the key fluctuations are and what your trade-offs are on a larger scale as well as a small scale, because they will impact you on both sides. If you live in the area, then you're gonna have to pay more for, your beef. That's just kind of how it is. Um, and that can be spread out in several different aspects of the economic spectrum. The other thing is, safety first. In agriculture, it seems like there are some places that don't stress safety and others that do stress safety. If you can stress a lot of the key tools that come from um, different organizations, like let's say OSHA, okay, it's a big government agency, boo. But you know what? They did a lot of work. And if we can implement those on smaller scales without having to involve them before they get involved, then we don't have to worry about it. But they took the forefront and taught us a bunch of lessons. So, um, you can take the good from the good and the bad and leave the bad aspects behind in a sense like that. So I'm trying to get scaled up and be OSHA compliant just because I see the wisdom in that, and that safety, again, it's all about people. The easier you can make life for individuals to make it through this step and on to the next, so that things will become easier down the road and continually become easier for individuals in life in general, the better our community should do. Um, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, that plays out very true. Um, the other thing that I've learned in agriculture this year is, let's see, well, um, more is not always better, and quicker is not always better. And that comes down to, again, pre planning. Probably the biggest thing I can emphasize is plan, 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 and then implement. Spend all of your 99% of your mental and then do 1% of your physical. Same throughout football. Even in church, when we think about, our prayer and our thought process, do a lot of that planning work. And then once you're good to go, pull the trigger and then move forward, but stick with the plan. It's, um, it's important to stick with the plan because that keeps everybody on the same page. The minute you start changing a plan on the fly, then you start losing people off the page, and then you start undercutting your foundational stones. And just like a building, you don't want to cut the foundation because then your whole building is going to collapse. Um, and more is not less in so many aspects. Um, you want to focus on the key points of what are you providing for people. You want to think about your customer base, and your customer base can be as broad as you want it to be or as narrow as you want it to be. But pinpoint it and then go for it, and know what your competition is up to. I learned this in business school, and it's not necessarily that there's a real competitive market, but you should even work with what you view as your competition to go, okay, well, if you're going to plant this much, then I need to plant this much. And it's not a monopoly of people working together to raise prices or anything like that. It's just common sense. Well, if this much is needed here and we're displacing this, it keeps your trade-offs very even. And that again crosses so many different boundaries of work and life and experiences that I've had that really rings true. whether it's working in the building industry, manufacturing industry, agriculture industry, IT and tech industry. You know, the more we can all work together and know what aspect of a project from a large scale that people are working in, the better we can communicate what is needed, where, and when. And we can avoid large bumps and trade-offs and bubbles and economic bubbles that destroy lives and make millionaires at the same time. You know, it's not that we want to keep people from being millionaires, but I believe that it's really possible to bring everybody up at the same level at a fairly similar rate. But these are a lot of things that I've just learned on the fly in the last year on agriculture. Um, you know, in the hemp industry is really different than the food industry, but still also very similar in so many different aspects. The similarities actually outweigh the differences. But I look forward to next year and next year's crop. Hopefully, I will get some momentum and be able to communicate with some people that are like minded and get some small scale agriculture and just move right in with some really good tech and implement some of those technologies right away. Thank you.